Good morning, Threshers. Welcome to those of you in attendance here and also those of us who are joining on our streaming platforms. I welcome your presence here today and look forward to the conversation and presentation that we're going to have here in Convocation. Before we start, however, a couple of announcements. First, we're on the cusp of spring break. I encourage all of you to take care of yourselves by sleeping, eating, hydrating, and generally being well rested so you can focus on your exams over the course of this next week. Please also attend to your emotional and spiritual lives during this next week as well. I wish you the best of luck on exams. On the topic of emotional and spiritual lives, a couple of pre-convocation announcements. Immediately following convocation, you're invited to stay for a time of meditation and prayer for the people of Ukraine as they endure intimidation, death, and displacement from invading Russian forces. Michael Unruh, our campus pastor, along with student chaplain Sam Wilson and Natalie Graber, will facilitate this time of prayer here in Memorial Hall. It is expected to last around 10 to 15 minutes, so you should be able to participate in that before you go to lunch. Also today, our hearts and minds are with the Tabor College community. Yesterday, the college released a statement confirming that 2 Tabor College students, Christopher Castillo, California, and Jonathan Avalos, a junior from Paso Robles, California, were killed in a single-car accident south of Hillsboro, near Indigo Road and 130th. Jonathan Medina was transported to Wesley Medical Center in Wichita for treatment of injuries sustained in the accident. The loss of life is tragic, saddening, and a sharp reminder of the college will release a statement of support for the Tabor community later today, offering our condolences and any resources that they might need as they deal with this tragedy. If you are affected in an adverse way, please reach out to Jill Hoops, Pastor Unruh, or somebody who you trust to process your thoughts and feelings. The Tabor community and families affected by this accident. Thank you. Our convocation speaker today is Andrew Goff, owner and founder of Reverie Coffee Roasters. That name, Reverie, and even Andrew's name, Roasters now previously occupied by Mojo's. I met Andrew for the first time around a boardroom table. I was impressed with his business approach, which he described to me as a triple bottom line approach, and his passion for his business, which has to do in large part, although not exclusively, with coffee. But I was equally impressed with his story about how he arrived at this moment and how he wants to become part of the Newton community. His vocational journey is unique, unpredictable, and features both callings that are internal and callings that are external. I've heard him speak, I've drunk his coffee, and I've sampled his pastries, and they are all excellent. Andrew got his bachelor's degree from Kansas State University in journalism and mass communication, and has since thought a lot about the spark and the fire that is necessary to start a business. Please help me give a strong, caffeinated welcome to Andrew Goff.
So I looked at the list of people that were doing this convocation in the weeks before and after this, and I feel way out of place. So thanks for being kind to me. I've been told the technology is kind of interesting, so I'm going to double check every now and again. So I found myself on a rooftop in the middle of Guatemala, staring at what is probably one of the most beautiful volcanoes, staring at it as it's erupting every night. About every 4 or 5 minutes, you'll see a poof, and you'll hear it actually, and then you'll see sparks. In the daytime, you just hear the sound and a little puff. And kind of wondered, like, what does this have anything to do with my life, and like how I got there? Like, how did I get to this place? And I wanted to kind of like tell you my story, as Dr. Gearing had mentioned, about how I came to be. And it all started with this like one spark of this one idea, and how it led into coffee, and that coffee being that connector. So, as mentioned, I attended K-State, and I entered into the hospitality program. And within about 3 months, I realized I never, ever wanted to be in the hospitality business. It was just not for me. And after the first year, I switched gears and went the journalism path, and ultimately ended up with a college degree in mass communications, emphasis in public relations. I also didn't think I would ever be able to use that degree. It was just a simple way out of college. For me, getting a college certificate was to appeal to my family. My father had once said, and I'm not kidding, in a meeting when I worked with him later in the financial services industry, to a customer with me 2 feet away, we never thought he would finish college. And for me, it was just about, pleasing them. I later on became a financial advisor, and for almost 11 years worked on helping people figure out exactly what it is with their life they needed to accomplish today so they had a future for tomorrow, and retirement savings. I did that both as a sales rep, but also as an employee education coordinator for a 401k company. And I traveled around towns like Newton. In fact, I had probably half a dozen customers here. My job was to literally stand in front of them and explain to them in a more entertaining and educational way, taking money out of your paycheck and putting it away for something that you can't quite comprehend. So I had a lot of fun with that because I was good at it, and it was important work, but it wasn't everything for me. So fast forward, well, actually I have to go back almost the beginning of my financial career. This bag of coffee, this is actually a current version, but this is an idea that sparked every bit of change that led me to today. A friend of mine who worked in the same company had been raising money for a charity, the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. He was a part of what was called the Man and Woman of the Year program, and the goal was to raise as much money as you can in I think 6 or 8 weeks, and the winner would get to say they're the winner. And he was selling bags of coffee with a special label on it, and that particular label was designed by the kids that were represented in the organization, and then an artist put them onto a better, more well put together label, and I gave him $15 or whatever it was to support the cause. And then I drank the coffee, and my life was forever changed. The coffee that I'd had was unlike anything I've ever had before in my life. And I know that's such a small thing, just to have something that tasted better. But that was the spark for me. And I think the important part of it was I didn't just let it go and fizzle away and move on with my life. I never forgot about that part. And it took years later for me to realize, in fact, it took 9 years later, when I was looking at doing something more with my career, that coffee was the thing that stuck aside. Because what happened after that was I stopped drinking garbage coffee, and I started finding better products. I started traveling, and I would seek out tastier coffees wherever I went, be it a coffee shop, if I was at a store, and I would look for labels that were more interesting. And I'd try to figure out, for me, what was different about it. But I really didn't know anything about it. I just knew I liked it. So it was something I became interested in. So the takeaway, if this presentation is anything, is that just imagine a spark comes out of a fire, or you create it off a flint. You have to actually nurture that and move it somewhere else to actually create a flame. It's not going to take care of itself usually. And for some people, we get that right away, and some people, we just let it go and we forget about it. So it's an opportunity is what that really represents to me. So 9 years later, I started the business that later became much greater than I ever imagined. And now we're 9 years after that, and we're still alive. Last year, we coined the term, we're not dead yet, after the entire world tried to kill us in more ways than one. So when we started our business, we had this idea that what we were going to do is create a community around what we did. We would say, I think the terms were coffee and community. It was just a thing probably half a dozen coffee shops in the region would say the same thing. And that's kind of what we all felt like we're there for. But we didn't fully understand what that meant until time went on. The term together coffee was something that we used as a way to emphasize that through coffee, together, we're going to do good things. So it was kind of an accident that one of my employees had kept hearing us say together coffee, and in the email to the company that he ran for us, which was a service company to help fix and repair equipment, he thought we said two better coffee, even though he just mistaken the words. And we actually adopted the idea of two better coffee is kind of symbolic of what people obviously think for us to do, is to make it better, to always get better, and to focus on being a better version of ourselves tomorrow than we were today. So both concepts actually work really well with what we do. But that kind of became the foundation of our business and how we operated, both from internally, how we looked at our employees, how we looked at ourselves, our vocation, and how we didn't really honestly knew what we were doing every single day until we started to figure it out. And then we wanted to be better at it, both in the service we provided to people, both in our stores and outside in the commercial world that we live in and beyond. And it spurred us into an area that I never would have imagined, opening multiple cafes in Wichita. Some are still there, or one's still there, some are not, for a few reasons that you could probably imagine. We pride ourselves in being a really high-quality establishment that is a leader in the industry, and so that's what a lot of people think of us as, is this cafe in Wichita that people have been to. I'm just curious, has anybody been to our coffee shop and cafe in Wichita? So if you do like to go to coffee shops, please come try it and give me your opinion. I'd like to hear it. That was where we started, and we slowly got better, moving from one location to the next, opening additional cafes, all with this idea that we're going to get better tomorrow than we were today. We really pride ourselves on the vocation part of what we do. If you look at the bedrock of what we believe in and what we do, the best symbol of that is through coffee. And if any of you have been to foreign countries, developing nations that produce products, we live in an agricultural society, so you understand kind of how it looks. Imagine it on the scale of coffee where it's at. We have so much that we owe to that industry, and so we wanted to make sure that we paid homage to the growers that really support our habits, our income, our communities, and really pushing our team to be better at what they do. We've created a manufacturing process, essentially, but at the very root of what we do, it's about people. It's about learning from those people. It's about being curious on how we can take something as simple as a green coffee bean and turning it brown, but much, much more than that, maintaining quality all the way from the beginning of the process to the point at which it's in your cup. There's a really big value chain that's touched by the entire globe, really, when you think about it. And we wanted to play a small but significant role in that. What it does for our team, I mentioned curiosity, but it also drives innovation and truly motivates my roasting team to be the best version of themselves. They are so in it, and they want to get that word out to everybody else. So they don't just think of a cup of coffee as just something, just a cup of coffee. It's so much more than that. So part of this vocation is a process. We have to learn about every aspect of it, but we can't do that without valuable partners. This is my friend Ryan, and although during COVID he technically worked for us as a way to help figure out how to get through COVID, but he is our importer. He is from Chicago area. He married a Wichita girl, and when I came back from my first trip to Guatemala, she had seen posts about being in basically the same place. And so we were able to meet via Skype while he was still stuck there, learning about the very, very beginning of how to operate a coffee exporting or importing company. And we have created this amazing relationship that not only is professional, his wife was our nanny for a year during COVID and would be our go-to for babysitting until they moved away from Wichita. We went from buying one sack of green coffee, which is about 152 pounds one year, to I think in 1 year we bought over 200 bags of coffee from him, which became a significant contributor to the overall coffee that we sold in around Wichita, Kansas, the region, and really the United States. We ship everywhere. I think at one point in time, Guatemalan coffees represented 81% of our sales, which is a really big, we've invested a lot in that country. He is committed to the beginning of the process so that he can then take these products and move them up the ladder, and he's our educator. He's the boots on the ground for us. And I wouldn't have had that relationship if I hadn't started with that one spark. And it's not only beneficial to my business, it's to my personal life as well. He's the educator to us when we can't be. He's also our connector. Again, we're connected through coffee. He connects us to the beginning stage. This is Don Pedro, one of about 60 different farmers that work from the Yepacapa region where he technically takes up residence when he's there. This connection was probably one of the most powerful things, even though I thought we had great connections. Diving a little further, digging a little deeper, this is the kind of relationship you get, is meeting someone. And I have another photo I could not find for you today where we were literally handing back the coffee bag of the coffee that this farmer had created the year prior. And so the full cycle, seeing it come all the way around, had so much more of an impact than I would ever imagine, because he was able to realize, like, the hard work that he had done, here's where it comes back. Most of these people operate in developing countries never fully understanding that cycle and how it's completed. So it was really important for him, and especially if you consider that in the agricultural community, in coffee especially, when it is a price-driven commodity and these people make well below living wages. This is not something they want to do for money. It has to be something else until we can help raise additional funds. So these are all things that Ryan was able to help us facilitate and keep us interested year in, year out from supporting people that we barely know, but we know that are vital to our business and to our community. Again, connected through coffee is how that happened. This is a strange image of my staff at the time. We took this photograph not knowing that within about 2 months after this, the entire world that we live in was going to be changed. And it was, this photograph represented most of my staff at the time. I don't know if you know, like, you can never get everybody together in the same room. But we had a nice, robust group of about 34 people that work for us. And I wanted to contrast this shot with, like, just the impact of COVID, that how many people weren't there literally within a few days of news that was unraveling. When we were learning about COVID the way that all of us were and how it might impact us, we really had no idea what we were doing. But we started asking ourselves a bunch of questions. In fact, we asked ourselves 20 questions about what would, and I'll start with this one idea, what would happen if 75% of your customers just didn't show up the next day? And we thought that was the craziest, dumbest question ever, because there was no way that was going to happen. And then it literally happened. As the world started changing rapidly around us, out of our control, we had to rapidly make changes. And answering those 20 questions, we realized that the number one thing to our existence at that moment, and really probably always has been, our staff, the people that work for you. So it's not that we didn't think these things were important, it's just that we didn't know how important they were. And so at that point, every single question we asked was about, had our staff in mind first. How do we go out of business right now? How do we do it in the most respectful way possible so that when it happened, it wasn't going to create a situation that we would never be able to recover from? And I put this in here at the last minute. I don't expect you to read this. This is one of the first, this is actually the last post I made before we closed. And it was kind of symbolic in a way. It had a lot of meaning to me. I don't know if it meant anything to anybody else. But when I walked in the cafe to help the team close down in Wichita on March 22nd, we shut down early because the sales were so bad. We were just like, why are we even open at this point? One of the gals in the photo there you'd seen, she had turned on Frank Sinatra and was playing the song My Way. And I didn't realize like that until later when I was trying to remember this as I made the post. But we did everything that we wanted to do in that moment our way, the way that we wanted to do. We weren't being told you had to shut down. We were doing masking and all the things that we felt were necessary to keep them safe so that we could be operational per their direction. And I think that's really vital to our team, or to our existence, is that we put people first, our own staff first. And this was just like one thing that I reflected on last night preparing for this today. And we did it our way, not my way, like as a group, you know, and that has such an important part of what our business really represents and stands for, that I hope to be able to continue to share with people even as we are up here in Newton. So as we came out of COVID, or not really come out, we started working with it. We created some funny situations for ourselves. We created a drive-through. It's just a simple thing out the side of our warehouse where we wanted to stay connected with our customers. We worked with our staff to figure out what is it that we can do given these really weird set of circumstances. We want to keep people employed as long as we can. We want to pay people as much as they possibly can so they can be comfortable within reason, that they don't interrupt benefits that they might have be eligible for during these times. They needed a life outside of sitting at home doing nothing, which was a real thing for a lot of us. And so we created things together, from products to how we did service. We were able to experiment a bit with new things, and that has paid off today in some of the changes that we've been making in our new cafes, as well as things that are coming down the road. We opened our business back up. I feel like we did this multiple times as COVID just kind of came and went, or came on stronger and then went away for a little bit. And from this, though, we emerged with a much better vocation in the work that we do. One of our staff members, as an example, in his time when he was at home with no work to be done because we weren't producing food, discovered that he had a real knack for producing pastries of a way that very few people actually do in this region. And we've now created one of the most rewarding programs that I'm super excited to get here into this marketplace. It's a little bit more complicated, making things daily and driving them 30 minutes every day, but we're working on that. But that kind of vocation was created out of people trying to figure out how to just be normal. And we've allowed them the freedom and flexibility to do just that in our space. We've been rethinking absolutely everything in our business, from our accountability of our staff, the communication aspect of our business, and how to make sure we're staying in touch with our people. Think about our future differently. One small, tangible thing is we made a point to pay every one of our employees at least $15 an hour as a minimum, just right out the gate, and we'll figure out how to justify that later, because we knew that was necessary to retaining good talent and letting the people know that work for us, that you belong here and you're valued. Those are just things that I don't think enough businesses are taking into consideration as they rethink their businesses, but that's something that just made sense to us. So we opened up this cafe, literally I can see it out the window here, as an opportunity. It was brought to us, and soon we'll have another location here on 12th Street in a little shop that's called 12 Brew, and we're going to take that space and make it more like our own, but in a drive-through format, because now we have interest and have done this a little bit, tiny bit of experience. Both of these were connections in coffee, one from a colleague that was in the industry for the same amount of time almost that we were, right here on your campus, and another was a customer of ours that was looking to have someone take over their business. These came to us all in the end of last year, and without that connection, we wouldn't be here. We are doing our best to be fair to our staff, to our customers, to our vendors, the people that we buy from. But number one, staff comes first. That's our goal all the time. That's what I believe you invest in to get where you want to be in the future. So a year or so ago, we tried to illustrate what our purpose was in this business. And that is a real simple statement: to precipitate positive changes in our communities. And I want to focus on the word our communities, or words our communities. Your community can really be anything from a couple people standing there together to this room, to this campus, this city, this world we live in. It could be the coffee industry. It could be a lot of things. And so our vision for how we lead ourselves is making sure that we are always moving towards better in all of those places. And we know that if we do that, even if we don't know exactly where we're going, that's going to lead us to good places. So that's the first thing. But our why statement, what makes us get up and go to work every day, what makes me motivated, is because communities will only bloom in the presence of opportunity. That doesn't happen accidentally. It's intentional. And that's where you come into play. This is what our role is. And when you see something as an opportunity, take that opportunity and see where it takes you. You just never, ever know where that's going to be. I saw this spark in 2004, and it's 18 years later, which I cannot believe it's been that long. I feel like I'm working in a young world on a college campus, and I'm 42 years old. I'm aging out. I think I need to roll again, actually. That might make me feel better here. But it is still makes me excited to go to work every day. And I loved my work I did in the past, but not as much as I love doing this. Like, this doesn't feel like work. So I encourage you to find those sparks and continue to improve your community, be it here, be it back home, wherever you're from, and wherever you go in the future. And just always remember that communities are always going to be better when people work together to fix them. It's not an exclusive thing. This is something that we all have to do better together. So thank you very much.
Okay, Andrew has given us lots to think about and ask about with respect to philosophy of running a business, to coffee itself, how to interact with communities. So now it's time for questions. There's a microphone back there. If you're up closer here, make sure you yell loud enough so that I and Andrew can hear it.
Don't be shy.
Thank you for presenting. I'm proud to be from Wichita now, especially since kind of coming here was an opportunity for me to gain some distance from where, like, the first 18 years of my life. You're walking into a place that has a very strong tie to Mojo's. So, like, as a business and just as a philosophy, how do you walk into some place that could be very difficult? Like, I know a lot of people were very upset when Mojo's ended up being closed, and there was like, who's this outsider coming in here? So how do you approach it from a business standpoint, and then as a personal, philosophical standpoint?
So in this particular example, and this is something that we were prepared to consider, we thought really hard about how do you take over a business that already had a great following. How do you take over a business that, quite honestly, has fans that are probably going to be upset no matter before they ever, get a look and see what we have to offer. The previous owner of this space was ready to stop working, and so we were honored to be given the opportunity, a real strong look. Dr. Gearing knows that others were interviewed for this process, and it was her recommendation that we become that place because she felt we were going to give Mojo's the best chance of being itself, close to itself as possible. And so, for one, we tried not to make a ton of changes. We tried to focus on the areas we know could have changed, like the paint was just like something that repeatedly kept coming up. Please paint the paint and make the place, improve the space a little bit. I see our painter in the middle here. We couldn't have done that without you. So the other thing, though, was let's focus on quality and making sure people are still getting a value for what they were used to. But understand that we're not going to just always do things the way they were done. If that's the way we all thought, then guess what? We're not going to go anywhere. The previous owner was at a point where she was ready to make changes or go, and we said we'll help make those changes because we feel like it's an important part of seeing this coffee move on to the next 10 years of its life. And it's been in existence now for nearly 50 years, I think, if I do my math right. And so we wanted to be a part of the next group. I learned something the other day, by the way. This is a side tangent, but somewhat relevant. We're not here to just pay homage to the people that came before us. We're also here to set precedents for people ahead of us. And I think that's exactly what a university is here to do, is to set you all forward. So to me, it was the right time. I think we've come to meet a lot of friendly faces. I think in general, people are really happy with the product quality. You know, we're a locally sourced business. We buy almost everything that we can from here in Kansas. We are working on getting that to be a tangible number. The goal is to be at 75% of what we make comes from within about 150 miles of here. That's a pretty big deal. The exception of coffee, obviously, that comes from many thousand miles away. So that's the first part. Philosophically, though, I think it's all kind of tied together. I love small communities, and like this is an amazing little community that I quite honestly didn't understand how like good it was or how unique it was. Since taking over the space, I've had many family members who come from the Mennonite community who have expressed like all their stories of like how this town even came to be, the history of North Newton and the train tracks and what that symbol meant. And that's like stuff that I had no idea had a connection personally to, and I thought that was really interesting. And if you don't know that, you should look it up. It's really important stuff. So philosophically, as long as we know that we're doing the best we can for the people that work for us, will translate to the community. And as long as the coffee's good, like that goes a long ways too. So I hope that answered your question. It's a really long, roundabout, political way of answering that.
Thanks.
Thank you for asking.
We have time for other questions.
Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you for speaking today. I did have a question about like dietary restrictions in the menu because I've noticed that's something I can't eat any food from Reverie except the salads because they all have gluten, and Mojo's typically had like at least one gluten-free pastry. So I was wondering when you planned on introducing other like dietary restriction like items that people could eat.
Thank you for asking that. Pivoting a business from one town to another is a really hard thing. It's a lot of moving parts. Fortunately, we've been working with Mojo's to supply the majority of the baked goods and things you see, and I'm not exactly sure why those let's say non-dairy or gluten-free items haven't been a part of that. That's going to become a part of the everyday occurrence. It's just slipped through the cracks. We've had 1,000,001 things, so I'll be the first. I'll take that issue to heart and make sure that it's fixed. The biggest issue that we have though in dietary is that both our bakeries, hers and ours, are littered with flour, and so we don't want to come across strong as we are a gluten-free bakery. We might not use gluten in a recipe, but we have to be careful because many people don't eat gluten because of celiacs and other like really important health conditions. So, and that's the last thing we want to do is make a promise that we can't keep. So, for us, it's retooling that. And our pastry program in Wichita is so intensive that we would have to actually add more labor to help do other items, which is all happening right now. A big part of this is we are taking over our own food program from that. I believe on the last week of March is when we start to see the transition from their bakery to ours. So I'm eager to see what happens going forward. It's just hiring people, rewriting all new recipes and all that. It takes time, and we tend to be kind of slow to get it right. So I apologize, but we'll get there. Thank you for asking.
Other questions?
So at the coffee shop here at Bethel, it tends to be a place where, we can get together as students, study, build community. What type of community do you hope to build in your coffee shop? Who do you like to see come in? Who do you want to be welcoming to? What kind of community do you want to build?
So if we want to focus on this one, I think it makes the most sense. Students to me are number one. This is where you are. This is a place for you to kind of get away from school life. Maybe is to step aside without having to leave campus, and that's important. I went to K-State, and there was multiple places we could do that. This is a much smaller community, so this building is very important. So I think students first. But remember, we came into this with an already built client base, and there's a really strong community support from just within a few blocks away from here. So it's one of the most diverse businesses I've ever seen, from young to old. people from all over the world. Just this room alone, I know there's people from everywhere. It's kind of cool. So I hate to say everybody is my opportunity because that's such a baloney answer, but this town presents a really unique challenge of people come from all walks of life and different ages, and trying to please all of those is important to us. So I'll pick on a few things that I think are interesting. The arts community is one I feel adds value in all aspects of our life, and though they may not congregate within the space as an identified group, we want to use that space as a way to connect people through the arts. So we are going to host monthly art shows and exhibits in our space, and we're taking applications to our website. One of our employees is in the process of notifying the next one, and we'll see, hopefully we'll get into a cycle every month. So that's one big one. We also committed to keeping the same hours from the previous owner for a time being, because we needed to understand how the business operated before we just expanded outward. We would need to hire people, and we just needed to figure out how it operated before we expanded. But I fully see that space as being activated in longer hours for students, but also for entertainment. Being connected with the school's communication system, I see a bunch of events like one tonight, and one last night, and one the night before, I believe, or last week, that we would love to see those potentially happen within our space. We have a stage built in there, and I think years ago that was used much, much more frequently. And so I see that as being a place for people to congregate. It all has to make good business sense, though. We have to make sure that when we are open late, we're paying labor, that we're generating enough revenue to cover those costs. But I don't think that will be an issue. Give it a little more time. I think this year is the year of figuring things out. We're also dealing with COVID, so extending hours and working long is just not necessarily something that businesses are looking at doing. I mean, we're not the only ones that have cut our hours back and found efficiencies in that in Wichita. So I think in time we'll expand that outward, and you'll see more of that. Food program is another area. People are culinarily into tasty things, be it coffee or food. I think you'll see some really cool stuff coming. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, just a
Yes.
In just a moment, we're going to thank Andrew for the presentation, but a couple of reminders. Here at 12:45, we'll have a prayer and meditation session for Ukraine. In addition to that, I want to invite any of you who are interested to join Vice President Milliman and I at noon in the cafeteria. We're going to go find a table in the caf, and if you want to talk about convocation, past ones, current ones, what suggestions you have for the future, Vice President Milliman and I will be over there. So please note that today we'll be over there at noon. After thanking Andrew, who's going to make his way out, and he'll be hanging out in Centennial Plaza between the two buildings there. If you're interested in coffee, or interested in working at Reverie, or interested in any part of the leadership philosophy you just heard, please seek him out. He'll be out there. Otherwise, we'll undergo a transition and have the prayer for Ukraine in here. Please join me in thanking Andrew. Good job. Thank you so much. What's that?